Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last session of the 2021 to 22 joint conference. I just really wanted to set the scene for tonight, which sees us launch the Diversity Inclusion Toolkit, and really just say how we got to where we are today with it, really. So we started off, did some research a few years ago around forum outreach to include seldom heard groups, and we found at the time that forums really wanted to reach out to underrepresented groups, but they were sometimes reluctant because of the fear of doing that without cultural sensitivity. So we then worked with Include Me Too, and we came up with the idea of doing a toolkit to help forums to reach out, to know, to signpost forums where to go for information on their local communities, information on their population, and to think about what groups and organisations there are in their areas, and to enable them to make links and do some planning around the priorities and the actions that forums needed to do. So to think about how to engage different communities successfully so that everyone's welcome and included within the forum. And the aim of that obviously is that forums are as representative and therefore as credible as they can be, and that as many voices are heard as possible. So unfortunately, due to COVID, the work on the toolkit and the forums that we had involved stalled a little bit, obviously understandably, because the forums were really struggling for capacity at the time. So we then engaged with Diversity Trust, and we broadened out the toolkit and got it to the point where we're at now, so that we're ready to launch it today. And Cheryl and Katie from Diversity Trust are here, and they're going to launch the toolkit and talk through some of the concepts around who underrepresented groups are, and how really to reach out to them, and how forums can then use the toolkit locally to increase their diversity, their membership, their capacity. And I guess another thing to say is that we plan to do some rollout work with forums. And as Amanda said in the introduction on Monday, we've got some funding through Learning Disability England because we know that Black, Asian, minority ethnic families don't have the same access to healthcare, particularly around learning disability. So we will be doing some training and rolling that out to 15 parent carer forums, along with I think we'll be working with Include Me Too and Changing Lives, and it's NHS funding. So we'll be working with 15 forums to look at how they can engage better with Black, Asian, minority ethnic families around and reducing those health inequalities. So I'm just going to hand over now to Cheryl and Katie from Diversity Trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Really happy to be here. Really happy to be here. So we've been working for just under a year with Contact and helping to develop this toolkit. So it's a bit of a moment actually this evening, a bit of a celebratory moment as well. So let's keep it high energy and good vibes this evening. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to talk you through a little bit of a workshop that we've put together in preparation for some breakout rooms, and to really start to have the conversation about this subject matter, the how-to around this subject matter. What's happening already? What can we do differently, and what can we do better? And then what resources do we need to move it forward? So we've got an hour. Just under an hour and a half left together, and it's going to be good. It's going to be rich. So a little bit about me and my background. My name's Katie Donovan Adekambi. I'm an inclusion and cohesion specialist. I've got a background in building sustainable communities. I've delivered on contracts for local authorities around health and wellbeing and community engagement, always being pulled into the social justice strands of the work, because that's actually what I feel really passionate about. And actually the arena in which I thrive. I've developed diversity and inclusion programs for public, private and community sector organisations, and acted as D&I lead for previous employers. And now I'm the founder of my own consultancy that work with businesses essentially to create inclusive cultures fueled with belonging. So I think it's important to know the kind of career journey, but also from a personal perspective. I am dual heritage, I'm neurodivergent, I'm a working class girl, and I'm very proud of my womanhood. And so, you know, when I'm navigating the fabric of society, that's very much how I put myself out into the world, and I'm very aware of how the world receives me. And so when we're thinking about this idea of seldom heard groups and seldom heard communities, we're thinking really about, you know, protected characteristics, marginalized people, and people's intersections. You know, where and what I mean by this is where our different identities show up simultaneously, as I just described. And so I'm really looking forward to today's session, if you haven't figured that out already. Over to Cheryl.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, so this is me, and I have been working with the Diversity Trust for many years now. I created our transgender awareness program and been working with a few colleagues now for many years on that, and it's successfully transitioned to be done online. Aside from that, I've got a long career in IT and energy economics, which I won't bore you with. And if anybody wants to know anything about trans history, I can certainly talk forever about that. You can probably find me on the LGBT plus History Month tour every February, because I'm a regular speaker with that. At the Diversity Trust, we've got a proud tradition of supporting the LGBT plus community. Our CEO and chairman are both gay men, and we also have this very successful trans awareness training program, which I'm part of. And this is really important, I think, in today's society, because there are so many different sorts of families that you can have out there. You'll have families who have two fathers and no mothers. You'll have families who have two mothers and no fathers. You may have a family, for example, which is two mothers, but they have a male friend who has provided the sperm and who shares in the parenting. You'll have families where one of the partners has undergone gender transition, possibly both of them have. And you'll have families where the person who bore the children is a trans man. So all sorts of different types of families that you can have out there. And of course, children themselves can also be trans. So even if the parents aren't part of the LGBT plus community, the children may be. Back to you, Katie.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. And so just, you know, just to highlight, there's a wealth of knowledge here and experience between myself and Sharon. We're willing to use it. So please do ask questions and don't be shy, use the chat here this evening. Okay, so just to set a few virtual ground rules, please. Ground rules, not rules. Rules are meant to be broken. So we're creating an agreement here today, an agreement to really maintain a brave space. There's a big debate going on at the moment in this arena. Can we really create psychologically safe spaces when we're talking about social justice? You know, when the likelihood is there's somebody in the room, the affected, and there's somebody doing the affecting. So there's a big debate. So there's a move to acknowledge psychological safety, but a call to courage and bravery in the space. And so we're going to have the discussion this evening. We're going to share ideas. We're going to ask these difficult questions, and we're going to be prepared potentially to be triggered. This is a very emotive subject matter as we go. Exclusion, a very emotive subject matter. So, you know, whether it's in the session, be mindful if you are triggered, or if it's when you leave and go back into the house and you might start conversations with people that you live with, and it perpetuates. So just be mindful to take care of yourself, please. And in this case, we're turning mics off and less speaking, and try and avoid all other distractions, be as present as and grounded in the moment as you can. Okay, so just a little heads up as to what we're going to cover today and how. So we're going to do some basics around EDI awareness and some work around some kind of concepts and definitions. We're going to think about what a seldom heard community is, you know, how it's defined. We're going to do some breakout rooms, so you get to continue the conversation in breakout room activities. And we're going to consider kind of what's going on at the moment at your parent care forums, what you know could be done better or differently, and what kind of resources you need to go forth and kind of build the change. And then we're going to consider a little bit of the business case around the toolkit. So the toolkit is amazing. It's jam-packed full of templates, action plans, just wisdom, actually, if I'm honest. And so we're going to kind of touch on some of the key areas in that relate to the conversation that can help you go away feeling fully equipped this evening to start, start reaching out. Okay, so a little bit, like I said, we'll look at definitions first. So this idea of diversity, okay, the mosaic of people who bring a variety of background, styles, perspectives, values, and beliefs as assets to the groups and organizations with which they interact. And when we think about community development, and when we think about asset-based community development especially, this is absolutely rooted in this idea of cognitive diversity, everybody having something that they can bring to the table. And so when we think about diversity, we think about different cultures, different religions, we think about marginalized, or what we call seldom heard communities, which we're going to delve into shortly, in all its magnificent difference and variety. Okay, so when we think about equality, we think about this idea of everybody being treated fairly or the same, is the right of all human beings to be equal in dignity, to be treated with respect and consideration, and to participate on an equal basis with others in any area of economic, social, political, and cultural civil life. Well, equality is, it's a great concept, and we are all working towards equality essentially, but we need to be mindful that equality can be equally discriminating, because not everybody is starting from the same point on that playing field. And so we need to then start to think about more of an equity model, where people are assessed and treated depending on their current circumstances, okay, and given the tools and resources they need there. Okay, and it's a very different kind of perspective, but we'll delve into that in a little bit more shortly. Okay, and inclusion. Now you'll see the diversity and equality were multicolored letters, okay, but the inclusion part is the doing. It's a real doing definition, really, the act of including and the state of being included. But this involves removing barriers. It involves removing anything that hinders a person's progression or chances to self-actualize. Okay, so we see this a lot within organizations where bias, our personal biases, get written or transcend into kind of the fabric of the organization, into policy and procedure. Okay, so and this, for me, this image sums this up beautifully. Okay, so, and a picture says 1,000 words. So with the events of 2020, we've seen equalities exasperated all over the world, let alone in the country. But in the country itself, we've seen older people literally left out of contingency plans. We've seen the LGBTQ+ community disproportionately affected by homelessness. We've seen the Black Lives Matters protests erupt on the international stage. Okay, so I mean, and that's just a few. So we literally seen every equalities community disproportionately affected by the impact. And I know people in this room would have been affected too. So the reality, the first image on the screen here, the reality and the disparities are vast. They're clear. They're big. And when we think about equality, we've given everybody in the second image a box. We've given everybody the same tools, everybody the same resources, but it still doesn't create fairness, a real even playing field, because not everybody's starting from the same position, is the reality. And then we've got this idea of equity, okay, so that people, as I said before, get given what they need to self-actualize where they are in their lives and at that point. And so here we can see quite clearly that everybody in the third image gets to watch the match and enjoy the match. But ultimately, ultimately what we need. And the fourth picture for me is just amazing. We see the removal of the fence. We see the removal of the barriers and the obstructions, okay? And this can be applied to what we're doing here today, you know, inclusion, representation, you know, what are the barriers that are out there preventing people, if you like, from, you know, joining or even, you know, being their best selves or, you know, being a part of the community? What are they? Do they exist? Are there any? And this is an opportunity to think about this today. Think about what barriers might exist. And, you know, when it comes to disability, arguably in the Equalities Act 2010, you know, when it comes to reasonable adjustments, you know, this is something that's happening. But across the protected characteristics, arguably it's not being considered in the same way. So where those intersections show up that I spoke to at the beginning, where race, religion, you know, sexuality, where these things all show up simultaneously for a person, how are we catering for them? Cheryl, have you got anything to add at this stage? Is there anything you want to just kind of top that up with?
Not really, Katie, you're doing a fine job. I'm answering some questions from the audience.
Oh, fab, do your thing. Okay, so you'll hear me use this term self-actualization a lot. And for those who have maybe done psychology or social psychology in the past, you'll be familiar with Maslow. And Maslow talks to the hierarchy of needs that we as human beings need to be able to become our best versions of ourselves in this life. And it starts with physiological safety, okay? It starts with warmth, food, shelter. Okay, and then it goes up to kind of connection, social, love, you know, being a part of something bigger than ourselves, community. Okay, and then we think about esteem, and it's from those interactions, okay, and those having these basic foundations in place that we can start to feel good about ourselves and start to actually define or stimulate what you know what we enjoy or what motivates us. And so whether that's kind of learning a new skill or going to university or whatever it might be, for us to then self-actualize and be who we're destined to be or be the best that we can be. And so, you know, when we're thinking about this in relation to ourselves and we're thinking about this into relation to others, when we think about biases, we need to be aware that we could be preventing others from self-actualizing based on biases that we have, or knowingly, unknowingly. This idea of unconscious bias got thrust into our consciousness again in 2020 in a big way. So there's two angles here with this diagram. There's two in that I want that kind of recognition that these are what, you know, arguably according to Maslow, these are what we need to be able to self-actualize. But also when we're putting our opinions out there into the world, or when we're kind of engaging with a different community, how is this playing out for us? And how are we kind of perceiving those groups and those communities? And what is our part, more importantly, in helping others to self-actualize? What part are we playing as part of the parent carer forums? Okay, what are our roles within that? Okay, so just a little, it's about to pop off, Cheryl. So I want to ask everybody if they know what the 9 protected characteristics are. Now, the 9 protected characteristics feature in the Equalities Act 2010, and these are groups that are protected if they should be experience victimization or harassment, prejudice, discrimination. Okay, these are what characteristics, features are protected by law. Okay, I just want to test the room and see what we've got. So can anybody list them for me, please? Give you a couple of seconds to let that percolate. And especially when we think about seldom heard groups, this absolutely sets the foundations for this idea. Great, thank you. Fazila, we've got quite a few there: sex, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, disability, age, thank you. Gender, age, religion, So actually gender features as sex in the Equalities Act, though arguably it does need to evolve. Race, thank you. Religion and belief. Oh, who's that? Tina, smashing it. Okay, I think we've got all of them right there. Pregnancy and maternity, marriage and civil partnership. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I think you've got them. So there they are listed. Being a carer should be another, and that's a really interesting point. Thank you very much, because actually what I'm going to ask next is, obviously this is the list. This is the list that features in the Equalities Act, as you can see, and most of you were able to come up with. But there are characteristics, aren't there, that make us incredibly vulnerable, that aren't protected. And, you know, being a carer absolutely should be one of them. But can anybody think of any more, any others that, you know, you felt should feature there, or you feel should feature there? So yes, I mean, I'll give you one. I'll give you one. Menopause is coming up a lot, actually, when I'm doing this training out in industry. Oh, thank you. We've got some more coming up now. Homelessness, thank you. Well, homelessness, for me, that talks to economic status, right? It talks to class as well. Poverty makes people incredibly vulnerable. Yeah, class, yes, it was. Thank you, Sharon. It was originally going to be included, but it wasn't. Others, hair color, hair texture, weight, okay? And you know, things that trigger us, things that trigger biases. So when we think about you know, seeing people on site, accent can trigger us, seeing tattoos can trigger us, okay? There's lots of kind of characteristics that can set that kind of stereotype ball rolling in our minds. So really important to think about this. Now, in relation to seldom heard groups as listed in the toolkit, it expands on it greatly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them on the screen, because it's a really long list, actually, and it's fantastic that we've kind of done the work to really try and include as much as we can. But again, we recognize that it's not finished. You know, we could still add and build on it. But I'm going to put them on the screen for you to just lean in and absorb, okay, and get familiar with. Okay. Hi, Sue. Yeah, sure, you'll be able to get a copy of the slides after, not a problem. Okay, so here we can see religions represented, we can see nationalities represented, we can see economic status represented here, as well as a disability, mental health issues, people, those new to caring, families with limited literacy skills. Okay. Next slide. Okay, we've got more, we build on it still. What this idea of seldom heard groups and underrepresented groups, families with limited digital skills or non-use of social media. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for acknowledging that some carers are men, and actually in the toolkit, there's a whole section dedicated to how we reach men, how we reach those groups. It's a very comprehensive tool. Okay. All right, so I just wanted people to get an idea of what we mean by seldom heard groups and those that are underrepresented in the toolkit. Okay, so I want to launch a poll now. I want to ask you a question. Okay, so we've got 48 people in the room, and you know, representation from all over, many different forums. And I'm going to ask you this: has your forum been told that they are not diverse enough, or that they are not representative by other local groups or by your strategic partners? Okay, so launching poll now. Can somebody confirm whether that's come up on the screen? Because no, it hasn't. Right, okay, I'm going to have to stop sharing and then launch the poll, I think. So bear with me. Yeah, here we go. All right, so you have, let's give everybody 60 seconds. Yes. Great, so we've had 32 out of 38 responses so far. Got another 20 seconds or so, and I'll share the results. It's quite an interesting mix, actually. Okay, thank you. And somebody, one of the facilitators might want to take a screenshot of this. It's been recorded, isn't it? So you've got this for your own records. Right, so sharing results now. All right, can everybody see? So we've got 29% of people in the room, so that's 10 people said yes, they have been told this. 9 people, 26% said not sure, don't know, couldn't answer. And 16 people, 46% have said no. Okay, interesting mix. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing that now. Thank you for taking part in that. It's good for us to just do a temperature check as to where people are on this journey. So lots of talking from me. What we're going to do now is we're going to put everybody out into breakout rooms. Okay, so what's going on at your parent forum at the moment, you know, in terms of engagement and engaging seldom heard groups? You know, what's happening? Is it going well? And then we've got a question, what challenges are you facing? And the last question is what can be done differently, and what tools do you need to build the change? Each question is going to be given 10 minutes of consideration. Awesome. Hi everybody. So that was really, really helpful for me, and especially the room that I was in. We've got some really rich conversation going, and I managed to actually get some sticky notes written up as well in amongst the conversation. And I've just had a little flick through the Jamboards, and they're totally littered. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Lots of rich feedback and perspective there. But so what I'm going to do is just start with question 1, and I want either the facilitator in the room or somebody in that from all the rooms that felt confident or feel confident to do so, just put some opinions. Just let's have the conversation. Let's open it up to the floor, and we're going to give this section probably 10, possibly 15 minutes. So let's just have the conversation as a whole now. So what is currently happening out there to engage seldom heard groups? What activity? So I'll throw it out to the facilitators first, get us warmed up.
There was loads of great stuff being shared in our group. Oh, there was stuff being shared about a men's group, a dual multiple exceptionality group. Aldona, I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about that, because that sounded quite exciting.
Yes, please.
It's for everybody will know at least one child, if not their own. Basically, it's where you have a child with a special educational need. The special educational need doesn't have to necessarily be a disability. Obviously, you know, it can be anything, but it can also be a mental health issue as well. But also they're very bright at something. So they're very good at sport or art or maths or English or music or something like that. But there's a huge amount of children out there like that. It's very difficult for parents to deal with, because they're having to deal with the needs of the child, and quite often they don't have time to deal with the child's potential, and quite often the school doesn't help with it, because again, unless it's something that they do at school, it's not something the school will help with. So therefore it's something that isn't always really nurtured enough, if you like. And so quite often a lot of these children fail and really go off wanting to learn because their favorite subject isn't sort of being looked after for them, if you like, and quite often they end up in alternative provisions, or all different places, or just wanting to come out of school because they feel as if the school doesn't understand them.
Thank you.
And there was some other great stuff around getting workshops and things translated into other languages, and learning about actually how many languages are spoken in the forums area, and visiting a school and engaging with different groups. Loads going on in our group. It was a privilege to be in it.
Thank you. Another group for question 1.
I can just flag up a couple of things that were going on for forums. One was putting an advert out in the LA newsletter that goes out to 70,000 homes in the local authority area. That's done a couple of things. It's raised the profile of the forum around with councillors and local authority officers, but also it's helped them to access, although in small numbers at the moment, it's helped them to access younger parents. So that's been good. And the other thing is they've recently joined, another forum has joined my brain's gone, an equality forum for local voluntary organisations, and they're hoping that will help them to access more diverse groups.
Thank you.
There's another area, I was just trying to remember the other one, brain's on slow mode today. The other one was a forum who put on different groups out in different areas, a large rural area, so they can reach families who wouldn't otherwise access their forum.
One of the forums in my room went on anti-racist training. Yep, impressed with that.
Amazing. Very good, thank you.
There was one in the group I was in as well that have done that, because they audited their diversity because they wanted to go about things in the right way, which gave them a good platform to reach out to other groups locally. And they also had anti-racism training, which helped them to build in confidence. So that was really good to hear.
Fab.
Hi, I was furiously typing away the post-it note thing because nobody else could access it. So I just wondered if anyone from my group wanted to feedback anything that they had already said that I typed up on the post-it notes. No?
Yeah, I think we've got the same in terms of like other guys where the LA has sent messages to the households. We have a forum that is going on a local radio station. Where we had groups that are doing as much as they can to change the way that forums come across, but also engage people in different communities. Yeah, and I think that's I'm thinking about the difficulties here and everything else, but yeah. So I think I will leave that for now.
Yeah, no, question 2, Richard. I think we're going to have lots for question 2 with the challenges. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Lisa, you keep unmuting yourself.
Sorry. In our group, Richard talked about how they've reached out to other support groups in the area. So how the forum is pan disability. They've reached out to groups like Up and Down and Sight and Hearing groups, different groups. So they've got a wide range of different support groups to share amongst and reach out wider with. And if Richard wants to expand on that, maybe he can fill in.
Okay, that's me. Okay.
No, sorry, it was Richard Hobbs.
Okay.
Too many Richards.
No, basically we started the support group forum to try and reach out to the areas that we hadn't been able to get hold of. There are problems which are in question 2 around that, it has broadened us. It has got us out further than we were before, and we're starting to reach more and more families just because we're being able to connect with these other organisations within Somerset.
Great, thank you. We've just had a question in the where did the anti-racism training come from? Is that Jamie? Is that what you were asking? And yes, you will get the Jamboards. Well, you still have access to them. So what I do usually is just screenshot them and keep them. If they're spread out nice and evenly, then you've got a picture of the feedback. Final thoughts on question 1, and then we'll move on to question 2 because the challenges we've asked.
We talked a bit about collecting the data so that we knew who we were reaching, because if you can't start reaching who you're not reaching if you don't know who you're reaching in the first place, where the gaps are.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. And so I mean, I can elaborate on that as well, Aileen, because I was in your group. So it was around, do we incentivize people to be able to share their equalities data? I believe you've got the Max card, which is something I've just learned about today, if I'm honest, and that's used as an incentive to get people to kind of sign up to full memberships as well as kind of trips and engagement with the group generally. But it's an interesting one that businesses find challenging as well, if I'm honest, to get people to actually share and offer up their information. So an incentive is usually helpful. Right, okay, thank you. So question 2, let's talk about some challenges. Let's talk about some challenges. What did you have, facilitators?
Just to follow on from that, because it links in quite nicely. Again, Richard was talking about more like the stigma of actually admitting your different category, and so you can't collect that information, and I'm sure Richard can explain that much better.
Somerset is synonymous for not being particularly acceptive county of anything that's different, and very much stuck in the dark ages of sort of attitudes. And we had a real hard time with large influx of workers coming from Poland and Portugal. People really struggled to accept that, let alone gender diversity. That just seems to boggle the mind, and because of that, it's very hard on our forms that we send out to families for us to be able to capture exactly what the family dynamics are. People aren't willing to just put out there that they are same-sex families, that they are maybe there's I mean, we have come through knowing our children and getting to know the membership and their children. We know the sheer number of gender fluid children we have within the families that we have, but we're not getting that captured on our forms, so we can't put it into our database. We can't turn around and tell you how many trans families there are in Somerset or anything like that, because it's not, people shy away from those being open about that, and that is a big hurdle.
Yeah, absolutely.
I should note that Diversity Trust does run a number of youth groups in and around the sort of Bristol, Gloucestershire, Somerset area. So if the stuff in the toolkit is largely done on a national basis, because it would be pretty pointless to put local groups in. But if you do want to get in touch and ask about local groups, we can help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We spoke about as well on kind of our group about representation. And the fact that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so one person spoke about the fact that they, at one point, they had a really diverse representation from a certain group, but then one person left and that entire community fell away. And they've not been able to re-engage them since, and there's felt like a bit of a disconnect there, and that can be challenging. So we spoke a lot about recruitment, this idea of recruitment and retention, you know, creating that sense of belonging, so that you know, we can all be those cross-culturally competent representatives and not necessarily depending on one person. And how can we transcend that challenge?
Just to add on to that, I think Leicester, or in the Midlands, we have a challenge, which is, I think Leicester is the most diverse city in England, and that comes with its own challenges. So communication issues, cross-cultural issues. You've got just trying to cover the way that you communicate to all the people groups that you'd want to, and the thing that you're talking about, where some communities have got gatekeepers. Once those gatekeepers are not pleased with you, the whole community leaves. So I think we've had all that, but I think those are some of the challenges that just come with engaging different people groups. The other thing that we have is also, even when we're doing the work that we're doing, whether it's health and all those things, the core production factors are not at the top of what we're doing. So sometimes it doesn't come across as equals engaging equals. So then you lose the potency of what you're doing. But also on that is the other side, which is the funding for what we do, because a lot of what we do is voluntary people. So training plays a big part. Also, how do you capture and how do you keep the records? You talked about capturing all that record that you're talking about. GDP, you know, the laws around these things, so you cannot keep too much in terms of records. So that's another issue. We need training on the legal premises of what we do. We need training on actually how to engage hard to reach or seldom heard communities, and we need the people that are sensitive to do that. So that's a different thing altogether.
Wonderful, thank you. Ruth put her hand up.
Yeah, it would be really interested actually to have a conversation with Cheryl at some point, if that would be possible, because one of the things that we're finding is that we've got parents who have got children who are gender fluid or are identifying in a particular way, but we have groups who can support them to have those conversations, but they're really anxious about allowing their children to engage because of their additional needs. So they're worried that, say, for example, a child with autism, they're going, but it might be their autism that's making them feel like this. How do we split that about? So I'd really welcome a conversation at some point with you, if that's okay, if I send my email address, so we could just have that conversation about how to manage that and how we can support some of those conversations.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that is something that comes up a lot in the training I do. And the general point is that you don't do that because you're invalidating the kids' experiences by doing it. But yeah, email me and we can have a longer discussion about it.
Wonderful, thank you. So let's move on to question. Actually, Kate Horn, I just want to bring you in about to talk about the challenge around procurement. We touched on this just in preparation for this session. I just want you to just share I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but if you
what I said now.
We were talking about procurement. We were talking about the fact that organisations are holding other organisations to account around their diversity data.
Yeah, I think I was making the point that forums are. I think I was making the point that the power behind a forum is its collective voice. You know, in the NNPCF say, you know, the strength is in our shared experience and everything. But it's building that is a continuous journey. And also what came up in our group is it's not the forum's job alone.
No, that come up in ours as well.
Yeah, it can't be the forum's job alone. So we were talking about, you know, the responsibilities of strategic partners and other community groups, you know, and people coming together, because to be representative as a forum, you have to have all of those connections and you have to be well supported by other organisations because they're voluntary led. And that's what has to come up a lot on your question too, around what challenges are you facing, is capacity massively, especially after the pandemic and everything. And people that that you might have found it hard to engage with before, it's probably become even harder, you know. And yes, there's been some gains with the virtual, you know, there's definitely been some gains, and you might have heard from people you haven't heard from before, but making those connections is even more challenging. But yeah, I think the point I was making in the pre-session was one of the key unique things about forums, when you look in the code and all of that, is around that the strength of your influencing comes from, you know, being this collective voice and perhaps reaching families because of that peer connection of being a parent carer that other services might not be hearing from or not be able to reach.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you. Okay, final question then. What do we need to build the change? What do we need? Who do we need?
I'll start. No, I think one of the things across the board is training. First of all, training in terms of how we do this and how we make it stick in our forums. But also, we've started some of the conversations already in terms of like how we engage some of the militant groups and some of the other groups that we have, and how we utilize the voices that are speaking, especially for the forums. So that will need to forum members to be trained as well, but also to retain them within the groups. But sometimes when you get empowered, especially in some of the things that we're talking about, then you become headhunted by other organizations as well, because you can. And also we need the other supporting, whether it's voluntary, well, the voluntary sector that also accompany us in what we do, to also be trained up for the services and for the things that we're doing. And we cannot say, we cannot emphasize this, especially for health, social care and education. It is important for them to actually understand the areas in which we work, because it is harder for us to actually, make it important for our forums if those guys don't understand how important it is for them to actually reach out to everybody, and then we co-produce the solutions all together. So yeah, a mouthful there, but that's what
great start, thank you.
Katie, I think just from a little bit of what you said before in terms of what came up in the last one in terms of the challenges, it's not just about the forums, it is about their strategic partners as well. And looking at the board and some of the conversations we have in our group, it's about working in partnership with those strategic partners, and then recognizing their responsibility to be a partner and to be an ally in the work that needs to happen. And I just don't think that at the moment is there. And unfortunately, sometimes the expectation, I think the first question you asked is how many forums have been, in your poll, how many forums have been told that they're not doing enough? And there's still a high percentage of forums that are saying they're not. That's not necessarily that fair, because it's not just their responsibility alone. So I think that's one of the things that we need to help to change.
Mindset. Yeah, thank you, Gail. Thank you.
We said it, they talked about, if you have somebody coming in to do training to parents or to the steering group or to run a workshop or event for you, to make sure that training is accessible, that they thought about different languages, they thought out they might be talking to parents with learning difficulties, or if there's too much jargon. Something our statutory partners sometimes fall foul of is using too much jargons in their communication to parents, which means it isn't accessible because it just might be in a language they do not understand. So, and also looking at local services, having that map of what is available out there, not just statutory partners, but what voluntary groups are already established, that connecting with certain areas of the community and having mapping your area. You know what's out there to connect with.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so what I'm hearing, what a lot of your needs or a lot of your kind of desires in terms of the kind of solutions and to take us out of the other side of this are actually in the toolkit. So just in relation to some things that have been coming through the chat, there's the list of national services in the toolkit. around kind of translation services, as well as appendix around jargon and language that gets used, as well as tools and templates to be able to start mapping local areas and mapping kind of local services that can support you. It's absolutely rich with know-how and not just kind of generic know-how. It asks, there's a section in there to challenge people on an individual level. There's work in there for you to do as a group, as a team, as a collective, but then there's also work that templates and kind of suggested work that you can do with your partners as well. It's 70 pages worth of but practiced know-how, basically. Cheryl, I thought, did you take yourself off mute for a second? No.
Sure, yeah. I'm seeing quite a bit of stuff come up in the chat about having to be realistic, and a lot of the stuff that people were saying they needed basically boils down to three things. It's time, money, and people. And I think you also need a plan. All of you are going to be under-resourced. And there are lots and lots of things that you want to do, but yeah, you do have to be realistic. And you say, we've got so many resources in these time, money, and people. What are we going to do? What are we going to point those resources at? And if you have a plan like that, then firstly, you have a much better chance of success, which will make everybody happier and more confident. And secondly, you know where you're going, rather than just fighting fires all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So just in summary, because I'm very aware that we're coming back down to our last few minutes together. The whole point of this kind of workshop together was to to get the cogwheels turning in this subject matter. Start thinking about kind of what we need, what the challenges are, what we need to move forward. And over the last year, we really have pulled together a 70-page document that could really get you started and get this on the road. But I just want to highlight as well, it's an evolving document. It's a real-time document. So, the links in there, you can click on them, you can watch videos that have been embedded in it. We wanted to make it as kind of live and interactive and engaging as possible, not just something that's going to sit on a shelf and collect virtual dust. We really want to get people practicing what we're talking and preaching about in this room today. Okay, so I know that a lot of blood, sweat and tears has gone into it, and you're really going to love it, but we also really want your feedback on it. Once you start using it, we really want to be able to evolve it and really build an even stronger toolkit for the whole organization. So on that note, I just want to ask any of the facilitators if there's anything they want to say, or anything anybody wants to add, just to kind of summarize and start to wind down.
I'm just going to say, Katie, what we really love in the future is, obviously, yes, we would like it to be an evolving document. We know it is not exhaustive. There are so many other groups that are not included in there, which we would like to add. And also what we would really love, some of you have read the annual report that we've done this year that's got examples of how some forums reached out. We'd like lots more. So if you do have some local success, there's a particular group that you've reached out to really successfully and engaged with, you've built your membership and capacity, we'd love to hear about it so that we can include some of that in the toolkit to really bring it to life. So that's just a request. If anybody does have any examples, please just contact your advisor or myself or any member of the team, and we'd love to include it. So thank you.
Grand. Thank you, Carolyn. Well, if there's, Gail?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Carolyn, are we just going to tell people will be able to find it on the website? Yeah.
I was gonna do a little wrap up.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, if you haven't already, go and download it. At the minute, it's on the News for Forums page, and I'm sure it'll get up onto the resources page. But yeah, please download it and let us know what you think of it. And also, if there is something missing, please let us know. And next time we look at it again, we'll try and include it. So I don't know. Do you want me to wrap up now, Katie, or Sharon?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm happy. I've had a wonderful time. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
So from us, I'd just like to say thanks, obviously, to Katie and Cheryl for joining us tonight. And we know it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour just to introduce the concept of the toolkit, which is going to take some reading at 70 pages, but hopefully you will find it really useful, and that you'll be able to start having those conversations locally if you haven't already, and enable you to reach out and build the capacity and diversity of the forum to make it welcoming and inclusive. I think something that Katie said last year to me when we started this process really resonated with me, which is around forums reaching out with confidence and eloquence, and that's stuck with me. And I think, you know, the important thing is to say that it's okay to get it wrong sometimes, as long as you're really trying, because people will forgive if they can see that you're making an effort and you correct yourself. So I just want to say to everyone, thanks for attending the session. Thanks for attending the conference this week. We hope you've got plenty of things to take back to your areas, particularly on the toolkit. So please do use it. And I just want to say, obviously, I thank you to Helen, without whom none of this would have happened this week, to Tina, Maroon, all the NMPCF and everyone who's been part of making this week a success. And just remember to keep looking out for the sessions this week, because they'll all be uploaded to the website in time. And also please complete your evaluation session form from the session, which will come out later. There's just a big thank you to everybody, and thanks for joining.